I have a very unusual ability to be able to speak to people backwards, and they find it both amazing and odd.
Hi, my name is John, and I can drive my car backwards very well.
It's musical, kinetic, and visual.
I can even drive my car off using this muff bucket, Alakazam.
I've been able to do it since I was a child, and it's always been misunderstood, like me.
What a messy room this is. Some people don't like doing chores, but I enjoy using this magic to clean my room.
The man can speak backwards and reverse it, and it's 100% perfect forwards, 99% of the time.
You walk up to a lady at a bar and you're like, hello, my name is Nudner.
How does that equal Brandon?
Things aren't always what they seem.
Fun time! We got a party going on in here.
Nice! You got it! Freaky and entertaining.
My friends told me they had never seen anything like it, and that I had to share it with the world.
I'm not 100 bees working together.
What? Whoa, that is amazing. How does your brain work?
iPhones and computers let people see what my mind could do, and the acceptance felt good. It felt good because I had never really experienced it before. You see, things haven't always been this way for me. I guess you could say my mind is wired a little different. It's not easy for people to know where you're coming from when you're different, especially if you yourself don't realize how different you really are. And when I was growing up, I thought I was pretty normal, to be honest.
How to shave your beard like a man.
You don't.
Come and know me better.
People always told me I was pretty weird, and later my friends simply called it the John Austin way. My parents were absolutely mortified when I learned how to play my records backwards, and absolutely beside themselves when I learned to sing with it. My dad said, "Son, people will think you're weird and crazy." And I said, "No, they won't." Well, that was between the ages of 5 and 6, the same year I started first grade. And my teacher, Mrs. Stovall, called my parents and told them I was pretty weird and not very smart. John came in today imitating a washing machine to show the class how it worked, and it was absolutely ridiculous. John doesn't belong here, Mrs. Austin. We feel that he needs to be in a special needs class. And just like that, I was gone, and I wound up in play therapy with Mrs. Glasgow. That's where I saw a player piano for the first time, and I had already experimented with making my records go backwards, so I was absolutely fascinated with it because it was a machine that made music. And because of that, it had a playback mechanism, which meant it could be altered. I said, "Mrs. Glasgow, can we rewind the roll onto another spool so the end plays first and see if it goes backwards?" Even I have to admit that that's a pretty unusual order coming from a 6-year-old. I was terrible in school, and I hated every minute of it. Nobody ever really believed in me, and it got to a point where I really didn't care. My parents were told I was learning disabled and kept in remedial classes for several years. At one point, they put me in regular classes, but with no preparation or direction of any kind. People always want to know how my mind works so fast with processing words in reverse. A lot of people think that singing a musical melody backwards would be harder than just saying the actual words backwards. Most people are able to sing along with their favorite songs. It doesn't matter what order the notes are in. Once you learn it, you've got it. Music is a universal language, and there's some music that when you play it backwards, it sounds just as beautiful that way as it does when you play it forwards. And once you understand that, you can take those melodies and apply it to speech patterns. Before I ever had the idea in my mind for playing something backwards, I first fell in love with music. And because of that, my parents allowed me to bring one of the older stereos up to my bedroom. That's when the record player stopped spinning, and I realized I had a choice to make of which way to spin it with my finger. It was the most unusual and fascinating thing I had ever heard in my life. And while a lot of it sounded bad, I didn't really pay any attention to that because I understood what it was doing. What caught my ear and enthusiasm was that some of it actually sounded good. So the melodies I liked, I was able to learn them and play them forward and backward in my mind at will. The words were absolutely fascinating to me, and so I learned the sounds of them in reverse and then put them back with the melodies that were reversed. You can also learn a lot about backward sound and speech by studying motion on film. And when I discovered our home movie projector, it became an absolute obsession of mine. I remember the first time my dad showed us our home movies on the projector, and my first question was, where's the sound? And to me, sound for films was more than just talking. It was the sound design and also the music. And I often wondered if it would have been possible to put sound with our home movies and have it make sense and line up with everything. But years later, after working in film and television, I realized that it really would have been a waste of time. Everybody was always angry and sad. My brothers were a lot older than me, and I'd go chasing after them, and they really didn't want anything to do with me. Their mother had passed away a few years before unexpectedly, and my dad remarried to my mom. My dad was almost 47 when I was born, and because of that, from a musical and cultural perspective, everything was like growing up in the 1940s and 50s, and everything outside of that bubble was indifferent. Dad always said that I needed to learn to be like the other kids my age. It just didn't happen. He told me that I would run my friends off with all of my differences, and he was right. By the age of 10, they were gone. And then one day, my mom and I went to the movies, and I really wanted to see the projection room. And to my surprise, the projectionist came down to the lobby to greet us, and he took us up to show us the equipment in the booth. I had never seen anything like it in my life. He took an interest in me and taught me how to run the equipment. Nobody had ever done anything like that for me before. And he turned to my mom and he told her that I was incredibly smart and that my teachers were mistaken about me. He said that I learned the equipment so fast, faster than anyone else he had ever taught, and that I asked all the right questions. And standing next to those machines with my new friend John Evans, I had a sense of purpose and belonging like I had never had before. He saw there was something different, but very special about me. But my dad didn't see it that way. He caught me playing a record backwards trying to learn it, and he got angry and we yelled at each other. And he hit me. He hit me in the side of my head and I fell down. He had never done that before. very unlike my dad. He told me that if a professional musician ever saw me doing that they would think I was crazy. By the age of 13, I had run 3 R-rated films, and I felt like I was quite the man compared to my brothers. When I was 16, I got my first job at a movie theater in Charlotte, and they were impressed with what I could do. I was really good at it, but I had John to thank for it because he took time to invest in me and teach me. A few years passed, and I worked at about 3 different theaters in town, and each place had its own character and its own vibe. Working in a place like that, you run into all kinds of people, and you have all these stories to tell, you know. Well, I got to work with a legend. Ralph had been working in the movie theater business since the 1920s, and he was still going strong in his 80s. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. He'd come by the theater once a month to service the sound and projection equipment, and we became good friends. He would tell me all these old stories about the theaters and the projectionists and what things were like in times past. You know, back when projectionists were really projectionists. He looked at me once and he said, "You know, John, you ought to go to art school. There's really nothing left of this business anymore." And I said, "Oh, I know, but I don't fit in with people my age." And he said, "Well, you're always going to have to be around other people. That's life." And as time went on, I started to notice that I experienced the world different from other people. I used to have these dreams when I was a kid, that I had all these friends and they liked me so much. And then I just wake up.
Hey man, get out of here.
I can change, be like everybody else, for a while.
Blue, 42, hut, hut!
When you're constantly trying to be like someone else all the time, your mind just wears you out. To actually change takes a lot of work. And if you really do start to change, some people will come up to you and they'll say, "You can't do this. This isn't who you are." It's just in my blood. My dream about friendships came true for me, but it happened in a way I didn't expect. It also happened later in life. I never would have chosen that. I never knew why I was different until I stood up and embraced my talent of talking backwards. And now I know. I wish my dad had known, because some of my weaknesses were actually strengths, and some of my strengths, superpowers. Superpowers that need support and understanding and compassion and kindness in order to grow. The autism spectrum, it ranges from someone who can't dress themselves all the way up to a genius who works in Silicon Valley. You see, my parents were so worried about what was wrong with me till they missed what was right. It's a wide spectrum, and only now are we beginning to understand how diverse it really is. And I have had many labels put on me in my life, but this one I wear with pride because it gives me freedom. The freedom to change, the freedom to learn and grow, and the freedom to be John Austin.
Yeah, I remember when I met you. You were so inquisitive. I mean, you just really. I took a liking to you right off, and because you were like a kid in a candy store. I mean, in some cases you were too. I mean, if I'd had half the energy you had, oh man, I remember telling your mom, I mean, this kid's got more energy than anything I've ever seen in my life. God, I wish I had some of his energy. But you were so willing to want to learn, and and I've always wanted to teach people. You wanted to learn projection, and at that time, that was my livelihood, and I could see a future projectionist in you. Although I didn't think, projection would still be around, like I told you, that it was not going to last, that it was going to go video or, something. You caught me at the right time. You really did.
One day when I'm 80 years old, I'm gonna go back to work at an old movie theater as a projectionist. When they closed the theater down, I wound up going to work in television as a cameraman and an editor. And then one weekend, I called my 90-year-old friend Ralph, the old theater projection technician. And I said, "Hey, Ralph, you want to come by the studio where I work and see what I do as an editor?"
Well, Ralph, are you ready?
I am ready. You deal with magnetic sound here on your film, don't you?
Yeah, here we do. This is a film.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe you're on the right track.
There are many people in the world who are on the autism spectrum, and they don't know it. And you might be wondering what that looks like. Well, we're the ones who are just a little bit odd. The ones who are almost normal. You can't tell by looking at me that I'm autistic. I might just look aloof, or silly, or just normal. I have a strong tendency to emulate and become the people that I'm around. And no matter where I go, they're always there with me. I'm like your great-granddad, and I'm also your bro. But I'm also like a child. It will never matter how old I get. I will always be growing, and I will always be learning. And that's better sometimes, I think. Because life will never get dull, and that is where creativity comes from.